Caleb, Rowan and Mireya Holt believed they were boarding a flight toward success, not disappearance. What waited for them beyond the desert was never meant to be filmed, documented, or escaped. Every step they took was already planned by someone who never intended to let them return. The invitation promised luxury, but it delivered silence, control, and a sealed fate. Stay with this story, because what happens next proves how easily a dream can become a death sentence. Caleb, Rowan and Mireya Holt were not chasing fame when everything began, but they were chasing a turning point. Their lives moved in careful routines, safe and predictable, the kind that never made headlines. Caleb spent his days filming quiet luxury homes along the Oregon coast, capturing wide angles and clean shots for clients who wanted elegance without attention. Mireya lived online, writing about hidden travel spots and unusual destinations, always searching for places untouched by crowds. They believed opportunity came to those who stayed ready, and that belief made them lower their guard. The email arrived late at night, marked urgent but written with perfect grammar and official tone. It spoke of a private cultural project backed by a Gulf-based foundation linked to a powerful sheikh. The message promised exclusive access to a mansion never photographed, never visited by outsiders, hidden deep beyond the public map. The offer included first-class flights, private security, and a payment so high it felt unreal. For Caleb, it meant recognition far beyond real estate videos. For Mireya, it meant content no travel creator could compete with. They checked the sender carefully. The domain looked clean. The attachments carried legal formatting and seals that appeared authentic. The foundation name traced back to public charity records, though most of the details were redacted. Within hours of their response, a second email arrived confirming their selection. The speed felt shocking, but excitement smothered doubt. Official documents followed, already pre-filled with their information. Passports were requested, visas processed, and approvals returned in record time. Friends noticed how quickly everything moved. There was no long application, no interview, no public contact person. The destination was described only as a private airstrip outside a desert city, with transportation arranged from landing to departure. No hotel details were included. The contract stated full privacy and strict security compliance. One clause stood out but was easy to ignore in the rush. All footage and written material would become the sole property of the host, with no copies allowed under any circumstance. Mireya drafted a short teaser for her blog, hinting at a journey she could not name. Caleb packed his cameras, lenses, batteries, and memory cards, double-checking everything like a ritual. This project felt like a door opening after years of quiet work. The kind of door that did not knock twice. They told themselves secrecy was normal at this level. Powerful people valued control. That was the price of access. Their flight itinerary arrived just 48 hours before departure. A commercial flight would take them part of the way, followed by a private jet listed under a holding company name. The return date was flexible, depending on project completion. The lack of detail created a strange pressure, as if time itself was pushing them forward. Every step seemed decided for them, before they could question it. On the morning they left, the sky over Oregon was clear and calm. Caleb scheduled a final equipment backup, setting an automated system he had used on past jobs. Mireya queued posts to go live days later, believing they would be busy filming when they did. They locked their apartment, unaware it would remain untouched longer than planned. As they walked through the airport, nothing felt dramatic. No warning signs, no sudden fear. Just the steady belief that they were stepping into something bigger than themselves. Neither noticed how the contract folder had been replaced overnight with an updated version, identical except for a single-page number change. Neither questioned why the foundation stopped responding once the journey began. By the time their plane lifted into the sky, the invitation had already done its job. It had separated them from caution, from routine, and from anyone who could reach them in time. And somewhere far beyond the desert horizon, a place prepared long before their names were ever known waited silently for their arrival. The private jet descended just as the sun began to sink, turning the desert below into a wide sheet of copper and shadow. From the window, Caleb saw nothing that resembled a city. No clusters of lights, no roads, no movement. Only a narrow strip of asphalt cutting through endless sand. The landing felt too smooth, too practiced, as if the jet had touched down here many times before. When the engines powered down, the silence outside felt unnatural, heavy, and absolute. The door opened a dry heat that carried no scent of life. Waiting beside the jet was a line of black vehicles, perfectly aligned, engines already running. No logos. No plates. No visible drivers. The people who escorted them down the stairs moved with calm efficiency, their expressions unreadable. Before Caleb or Mireya could process the moment, their phones were collected and placed into sealed cases, explained away as a routine security protocol. The cases disappeared into the lead vehicle. The drive began immediately. The convoy moved fast but smoothly, cutting through the desert on a road that seemed to exist only for this purpose. The windows were tinted, so dark the outside world blurred into streaks of fading color. Minutes turned into an hour, then more. The road never changed direction. No towns appeared. No signs passed by. Just sand, sky, and the steady hum of engines. As darkness settled in, distant lights finally emerged, but they did not spread or grow like a city. They gathered into a single glowing shape ahead. High walls came into view, rising abruptly from the desert floor. The convoy slowed as massive gates opened silently, revealing a structure that felt less like a home and more like a fortress. The mansion stood tall and wide, built from pale stone that reflected the moonlight with cold precision. Inside the walls, the air changed. It was cooler, controlled, stripped of the desert's raw edge. Security towers lined the perimeter, their outlines barely visible against the night sky. Cameras followed the vehicles as they rolled deeper into the compound. The gates closed behind them with finality, sealing off the outside world in a way that made the desert feel suddenly very far away. They were led inside through towering doors that opened into a vast interior hall. The space was immaculate, almost sterile. Polished floors reflected the ceiling lights perfectly, as if designed to erase shadows. The scale of the place was overwhelming, but it felt empty. No voices echoed. No footsteps crossed theirs. No staff moved through the halls. The silence pressed in harder than noise ever could. Caleb instinctively scanned the architecture, noting angles, materials, the absence of windows at ground level. Mireya noticed how the walls grew plainer the farther they walked, the luxury fading into something more functional. Their path curved away from the grand spaces one would expect guests to see. Instead of ascending toward suites or lounges, they were guided downward. The air cooled further as they descended. The marble beneath their feet gave way to stone, then concrete. Decorative elements disappeared completely. The lighting shifted from warm and welcoming to bright and clinical. Each step felt like crossing an invisible boundary, though nothing had been said aloud. Their luggage never reappeared. No explanation followed. Security cameras became impossible to ignore. They were embedded in ceilings, corners, even along the floors, their lenses tracking movement with mechanical precision. The corridor narrowed, its walls bare and smooth, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Whatever promise the invitation had carried did not exist here. By the time they reached the lower level, the sense of being observed was overwhelming. This was not a private residence. It was a controlled environment. Every sound echoed sharply. Every movement felt recorded, measured, stored. The mansion above them might have been built for display, but this place was built for purpose. As they were guided deeper into the structure, the final illusion dissolved. This journey was never about culture, art, or storytelling. The invitation had been a funnel, narrowing their world step by step until nothing remained but this corridor, this silence, and a future that no longer belonged to them. The doors ahead waited, closed and unmoving, hiding the truth that would soon make escape impossible. The corridor ended without warning, opening into a wide underground level that felt carved out of secrecy itself. The temperature dropped again, controlled by hidden systems that hummed softly behind the walls. Bright white lights erased any sense of time, making it impossible to tell whether it was night or day above them. The space did not resemble any part of a home. It looked like a facility designed to operate without emotion. At this point, their path split. The movement was calm and deliberate, as if every step had been rehearsed long before their arrival. Caleb was guided toward a room filled with screens, cables, and camera rigs laid out with perfect symmetry. The equipment was not unfamiliar. In fact, It was unsettlingly familiar. The camera models, lens choices, even the placement of tripods mirrored his own setup almost exactly. It was as if someone had studied his work frame by frame and rebuilt his process from memory. Across the level, Mireya was led into a separate chamber that contrasted sharply with the filming room. It was spotless, white, and clinical, with smooth surfaces that reflected light evenly. No decoration. No personal objects. The air smelled sterile, stripped of any warmth or identity. The door sealed behind her without a sound, locking with a precision that suggested permanent intention rather than temporary containment. Caleb noticed the screens flicker to life one by one. Live feeds appeared, showing different parts of the mansion above and below. Empty halls. Sealed rooms. Corridors identical to the one he had just walked through. Then one screen showed Mireya's chamber from above, the angle wide and unblinking. Another screen showed him. There was no hiding here. The system had already decided what would be seen and what would be remembered. The truth revealed itself through patterns rather than words. This underground level was not hidden by accident. It was designed to document endings. The cameras were not for security. They were for record. Everything was automated, triggered by movement, sound, and time. There was no chaos, no urgency, only routine. Caleb realized the mansion's purpose had nothing to do with art or culture. It was a controlled site where disappearances were archived like private collections. Foreign guests with clean records and minimal local ties were ideal. Their lives could be folded shut without resistance, their absence explained away by distance and bureaucracy. The invitation was never about talent. It was about isolation. The equipment around him activated remotely. Red indicator lights blinked on, signaling that recording had begun. Every angle was covered. Every reaction captured. The system did not need instruction. It already knew what to do. The process moved forward with chilling efficiency, as if hundreds of similar moments had already taken place within these walls. In Mireya's chamber, the lighting adjusted automatically, responding to movement and breath. The room was designed to leave nothing behind. No marks. No evidence. No story that could survive outside this place. It was the final stop in a journey disguised as opportunity. Time lost meaning. There were no clocks, no windows, no signals from the world above. The mansion continued operating as if nothing extraordinary was happening beneath it. The cameras kept rolling, documenting every second until there was nothing left to document. When it was over, the system shut down as smoothly as they had begun. The screens went dark one by one. The rooms returned to stillness. What remained of Caleb Rowan and Mireya Holt existed only as data, stored and labeled within a private archive that would never be shared publicly. Above ground, the mansion stood silent and flawless, its walls hiding the truth beneath layers of luxury and power. Below, the facility reset itself, ready for the next invitation, the next carefully selected names, and the next story that would never officially be told. By the time the first light of morning touched the desert, the mansion had already returned to its perfect silence. The underground systems powered down in a precise sequence, wiping temporary logs and sealing access points as if nothing unusual had occurred. Above ground, the structure looked untouched, calm, and lifeless in the way expensive places often do when no one is meant to be seen. The fortress had done what it was built to do. The convoy exited the compound before sunrise. The same black vehicles moved through the gates, but this time their cargo was different. Sealed cases replaced human passengers, secured and unmarked. The road erased their tracks quickly, when sweeping sand back into place. Within hours, there was no visible sign that anyone had arrived at the airstrip the night before. Inside the lower levels of the mansion, a different process unfolded. Passports, visas, and personal documents were fed into an industrial furnace designed for total destruction. Digital devices were dismantled and sorted, their components recycled or stored. Memory cards were wiped using methods that left no recoverable data. Every object connected to Caleb Rowan and Mireya Holt was removed from physical existence. Their names were deleted from internal schedules. Travel logs were altered. The private jet's flight data was reassigned to a routine maintenance route. The holding company that operated the aircraft was dissolved within days, its records absorbed into a network of similar entities designed to appear and vanish without trace. Across the ocean, silence began to raise quiet questions. Emails sent to Caleb went unanswered. Scheduled uploads on Mireya's blog failed to publish. Friends assumed poor internet access, then time zone issues, then busy travel days. The idea of danger felt too extreme to consider. Luxury trips were supposed to end with stories, not absence. Weeks passed. Credit cards showed no new activity. Phone numbers rang endlessly. A missing persons report was filed, but it stalled almost immediately. There was no confirmed location. No hotel. No return flight. Authorities contacted foreign agencies and received polite responses with no data to share. The foundation listed on the contract no longer operated under that name. Its website redirected to a blank page before disappearing completely. A short article appeared in a regional news outlet describing 2 Americans who failed to return from an overseas assignment. The language was cautious and vague. Possible travel complications were suggested. The piece gained little attention and was quickly buried beneath louder headlines. Back at the mansion, the archived footage was reviewed once, then sealed. Each file was labeled with a code rather than a name. The collection expanded quietly, hidden behind layers of encryption. To its owner, these were not people, but completed entries. Proof of control. Evidence of a system that worked. The world moved on, unaware that anything had been taken from it. Caleb and Mireya's apartment remained locked, dust gathering slowly on the doorstep. Their unfinished plans sat frozen in cloud drafts and unposted notes. To everyone who knew them, they had simply vanished into distance and paperwork. What made this disappearance different was not how clean it was, but how confidently it was executed. The mansion did not fear investigation. It relied on complexity, power, and patience. Borders blurred responsibility. Time diluted urgency. Silence did the rest. By the end of the month, their case was officially categorized as unresolved. No suspects. No evidence. No next step. Just 2 names added to a list of people who went somewhere far away and never came back. And beneath the desert, the facility waited quietly, already prepared for the next arrival. The system believed it had accounted for every variable, but perfection often collapses at its smallest edge. Long before the private jet touched desert ground, a quiet process had already been set in motion thousands of miles away. Caleb's automated backup did not rely on active confirmation. It relied on absence. When his devices stopped connecting, the system assumed the worst and responded without hesitation. Encrypted files began uploading to a remote server hosted through a chain of anonymous providers. The data moved slowly, carefully, hidden among millions of harmless transfers. It contained copies of travel documents, contract versions, flight details, and a short video log recorded just hours before departure. The log was unpolished and raw, meant only as a personal record, but it carried something far more valuable than production quality. It carried context. Days passed, then weeks. The server remained untouched, waiting. The world above the desert forgot 2 travelers who had vanished quietly. But digital space does not forget so easily. It preserves patterns, timestamps, and inconsistencies, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. That curiosity belonged to Alistair Voss, a cybersecurity researcher known for mapping abandoned infrastructure. He specialized in tracing digital ghosts, companies that existed briefly and disappeared without explanation. While scanning dormant servers linked to dissolved foundations, he found the encrypted archive flagged by unusual inactivity triggers. The logic behind it intrigued him. Absence-based automation was rare and deliberate. Breaking through the encryption took time, but when the files finally revealed themselves, a pattern emerged. The documents pointed to a foundation that no longer existed, flight routes that led to unregistered airstrips, and contracts designed to remove ownership of identity itself. The video log showed confidence, excitement, and trust, all framed by the belief that opportunity had finally arrived. Alistair cross-referenced the data with other unresolved disappearances. Different names, different professions, same structure, same secrecy, same sudden silence. Luxury invitations, private flights, no return. Individually, the cases meant little. Together, they formed a shape that was impossible to ignore. He published his findings quietly at first, releasing fragments into niche forums and encrypted channels. The story spread slowly, passed between those who understood what they were seeing. The mansion was never named directly, but its outline became clear. A place that existed beyond accountability. A system designed not just to erase people, but to prove it could. As attention grew, the narrative escaped containment. Independent creators picked it up, then investigative journalists, then documentarians searching for stories that power preferred buried. The title surfaced first, sharp and impossible to ignore. An American couple invited to a Sheikh's mansion and executed the moment they arrived. It sounded unbelievable, which made it spread faster. No official confirmation followed. No denial either. Governments avoided comment. Legal responsibility dissolved into jurisdictional fog. The mansion remained untouched, protected by layers of influence too thick to penetrate. But something had changed. The silence was broken. The archive became a warning rather than a record. Future invitations were questioned. Private offers lost their shine. People began to ask where luxury ended and danger began. The system adapted, as all systems do, but adaptation is never invisible. Somewhere beneath the desert, the facility continued to operate, but now it did so under the weight of exposure. Every arrival carried risk. Every disappearance left a digital shadow. Rowan and Mireya Holt were gone, but their final trace refused to stay buried. The story did not end with justice. It ended with awareness. A reminder that the most dangerous traps are built with promises, and the most powerful weapon against erasure is the single detail someone assumes will never matter.